And we're back with number 11. 11 videos. Wow. And I want to thank everybody for all the really fantastic comments and the support and everything. I've received some wonderful um, notes from people, personal messages, notes on the page, and I want to thank everybody. It's really been a humbling experience. It really has, but people are enjoying this whole series of whatever it is we're doing here. So I'm just going to keep doing it until I run out of material, and I got lots of material, as you know. Happy Father's Day to those of you who have kids running around, and maybe some of you, you still have your fathers to hug onto and stuff like that. And I know I started this late, this whole thing, a few weeks ago, so I kind of missed Mother's Day. So a happy Mother's Day to all those people who have kids running around and mothers and so on, and happy Grandparents' Day, which doesn't exist, but it now exists because I've decided it's going to exist. Grandparents are often like the forgotten ones, sort of thing. Um, and some of them have played quite a role, and I know certainly in the community, in the Malton community, it's the grandparents that have subbed in for the parents many, many times, and um, yeah, they deserve their own day. There isn't one, but there is one now, because I've decided that there is one. Um, one story that somebody reminded me of that I'm going to talk about, and it's a classic. Um, I played in different orchestras and for ballets and operas and symphonies and stuff like that. And I played at what was the O'Keefe Center, and now it's, I think, the Sony Center. And when it was first opened in 1960, it was a mistake, and it's still a mistake. It was meant as a compromise. Anytime you have a compromise, you know there's going to be a problem somewhere. And there wasn't. The Toronto Symphony was playing in Massey Hall. The Canadian Ballet Company didn't have a permanent spot. The Opera Company didn't have a spot. So it was decided that they would build something, and it was called the O'Keefe Center. It's now called the Sony Center. It's down on the Esplanade on Front Street and down there. And it was supposed to be a compromise. It was supposed to be the home of the Toronto Symphony, except the acoustics sucked big time. It was supposed to be the home of the Opera Company, except that there's no wing space. If you remember the caf at the school, you had this massive stage and 4 feet of wing space on either side. So there was no room. If somebody was running off stage at this theater, they ran off stage and right into a wall. It was wonderful. There was no place to store sets for the opera company, so they would store them outside the building covered with tarp, year in and year round, in the snow and in the rain and everything. Now there's an opera house in Toronto. Now there's also a ballet center, and it's the sort of thing that just turning on the heat here because it's freezing down in my basement. Um, it's Now there's a place to play, but the acoustics at the O'Keefe at the Sony have always been terrible because of it's just a wide, high auditorium with really gradually slanting seats, and then on the balcony, you've got more gradually slanting seats, and the balcony is so far away from the stage that it might as well be like the next block over. But the stage, everything was made of concrete. So the stage was made of concrete, covered with wood, with or whatever they covered with. And I had the opportunity to play under the stage at the very back, where the orchestra pit was, and we were doing an opera. And there were three. We were doing a Wagner opera. Half your life goes by with one of those. Um, so you had three Rhine maidens. Rhine maidens are supposed to be these lithe, slim goddesses that swim around in the Rhine and sing and do all kinds of stuff. Well, the Rhine Maidens for this particular episode were three, I would say, three of the best opera sopranos they could get. And they were good. They were really good. One of them was Canadian. But these three women were what we call in Yiddish zoftige. they were they weren't so much Rhine maidens as they were boys that would float in the water. Okay, they were noticeable from a helicopter. So you had these three women, and they, I would say, combined weight 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, close to 800 or 900 pounds of women, Rhine maidens. They were like Rhine boulders on stage right above us. They were right above our heads. And we were at the very back with the tubas and the double basses and the timpani and everything like that. And one guy turns to the other guy. He says, "I think I just heard something crack." Now, it could have been a big joke, okay? But the next performance, somebody who has a link to construction went out and got yellow hard hats. And so the whole back row of this orchestra, which couldn't be seen by the audience, by the way, we were in t-shirts and jeans. The people up front were in the tuxes with the bow ties. So we all wore these yellow hard hats under the stage because, in case the Rhine maidens jumped up and down and the stage collapsed. Well, the conductor, Ernesto Barbini, I think his name was, he was not happy. And word got back to the three Sopranos, and they were not happy. And I think one of them is still looking for me, like about 50 years later. I remember somebody said they're looking for somebody, but it was really funny. It was a joke. I mean, we had to keep. I mean, if you've ever been to a Wagner opera, and I like Wagner, sort of. But his operas, he wrote something called the Ring Cycle, and there's 4 operas. And if you listen to them back to back to back to back, which I actually did because I took a Wagner class in university, and I subjected myself to the 4 operas back to back to back to back because you kind of had to because he was brilliant. He would string musical vignettes right through the whole all 4 operas, and every person had um, a musical thing. Okay, and this is, don't forget, we're talking the late 1880s, way before TV sitcoms and dramas where everybody now and Lord of the Rings and that other series with the dragons and people dying in every episode. Everybody has their own signature tune. Wagner did that 150 years ago. So I did that, and it's really long and really tedious. And that's where the classic "it ain't over till the fat lady sings" kind of thing. You have these sopranos with the chest protector and the spear and the helmet with the horns and everything, and she sings her dying aria, which goes on for about 45 minutes, and then she kills herself, and then he sings another aria for another 40 minutes, and then he kills himself. It would have been easier to shoot both of them at the same time, but that's a long opera, and we were just bored. There's a lot to do in that stuff, but it's a long opera. The shortest opera of the 4 is almost 4 hours long. You can imagine what the longest opera in that series is. So we were bored. So the helmets, the yellow hard hats, that was the fun thing. That was one of the things we did. We did several other things to keep the things going and to keep our sanity. But the hard hats, that was a classic. They never quite figured out who started that, and it's a good thing they did because they probably would have sat on them, all 3 of them. And that would have, the Rhine Maidens would have squished the life out of them. Anyway, so I've done Happy Father's Day and I've done the 3 Sopranos. Okay, here's a guy. When I started doing these things, I wondered how I was going to do it. And I didn't want to do it fancy and schmancy with everything. And I wanted to do this stuff low key. And by doing it low key, this is who I am, all right? I want you to look up this guy, Lee Sklar. You know who he is if you've been in my class. Um, he is the Gandalf, the long-haired, bearded bass player that used to play with people like Phil Collins and stuff like that. The guy has a remarkable 50-year-long pedigree of playing with everybody from James Taylor to Bette Midler to his list of stuff goes on it forever. He's played with Toto. He's played, you name it. He's gone to Japan. He's played with Japanese artists. He's toured the world. In fact, before the COVID thing started, he had done a 2-year tour with Phil Collins, and that's another story I want to talk about. And when that tour ended, he was supposed to head off and do another tour. Before the Phil Collins tour, he had done a tour with Toto and a couple of other groups. And then COVID started, and everything shut down, and his whole schedule just stopped. Because he'd be on the road, 260 days a year. So he was kind of glad to not play, but as a performer, that's what you live for. You live to play. And he's got to be, if not the greatest living session bass player, then he's pretty close to it. There's very, very, very few people, very few artists have his experience of playing literally with everybody. So he started doing something like this, just to keep himself busy and to talk about stories and his own experiences, the way I'm doing it. And he now has over 600 videos because he's done one every single day since March of last year. And it's very low key. And one thing I want you to dial in, go to YouTube. Okay, go to his page. Scroll down, or maybe it's on the top. Number 601. Video 601. He just did it yesterday or the day before. Okay, one of those days. Leland Sklar. And he plays bass because he all started. He had just come off tour with Phil Collins, and people have always said, we see you on stage, but we really can't hear the bass part because that's just by design. The bass part isn't front and center. The bass part supports everything in the band. So he figured, okay, I'll play bass, and I'll put the music on, and I'll play along with it, so you hear and see what I'm actually doing, bass line. And I was saying to myself, I wish he had done this 10 years ago, when I was still teaching, in band and still teaching guitar, because this is a resource. If you're a bass player, okay, you're basically sitting in and talking to the greatest living session bass player in the history of the instrument, who's very happily sitting in front of a camera for 15 or 20 minutes a day and just playing stuff, all the stuff he's done. And if you go on his Wikipedia page, there's a partial list of what the album he's on. He's done 10,000 albums. Okay, the list goes on and on and on and on and on and on. So that's something you might be interested in if you're a bass player. Now, if you're a drummer, this group, I think I showed you this video. Again, this is, if you've been in one of my classes, you know that I have a fascination for showing videos. If I find something really, really cool and really interesting, you're going to see it whether you like it or not. This group, the Top Secret Drum Corps. Okay, they did their first ever appearance at the Edinburgh, Scotland drum tattoo, which is a big, big thing for marching bands and drum corps and stuff like that. And they just burnt the house down. It was amazing. Well, go on their webpage and take a look at some of the stuff they've done, especially some of the recent appearances like 2016, 2018. Now, the thing to remember about the top secret drum corps, these are all amateurs. Everyone in there is an amateur. They're not connected with an army. They're not the British Royal Marines or something like that. They live in the Swiss town of Basel. Basel is the birthplace of drumming. The birthplace. The Basel drummers set down on paper how to play drums. And so it's interesting that these people are like university students, dentists, doctors, lawyers. I mean, they're all different shapes and configurations, but they practice every day. And the precision of this group is beyond anything you've ever seen on a drum line. And they have a wonderful sense of humor, too. They don't take themselves too seriously. So when you see them come out in their, 17th or 18th century costumes of Swiss Basel drummers, they look the part, and man, are they ever good. So these two guys, this is your homework. Whoops. Leyland Sklar, this guy, look him up, YouTube page, and you go to number 601. This group, Top Secret Drum Corps, anything that they've done in the last 2-3 years. That's your homework. And I'm going to keep it a little shorter today because apparently people are still watching like 4 or 5 minutes at a time and getting bored and running to the fridge and, something like that. But I want to talk about fashion shows. Some of you were involved in fashion shows. Some of you are glad you were not involved in fashion shows. And some of the stage crew people had to deal with the fashion show of some kind. And just because you're in a fashion show doesn't mean you're going to be a Nobel Peace Prize winner or a scholar or a lawyer or a this or a that. You basically have to remember to put on clothes that you're given properly and walk down and then turn and then go this way and then maybe go that way and come back and go back upstage. And before everything we did, I told them how to negotiate and what the stage terms were. I mean, you're on stage. I don't care what you're doing, whether you're juggling elephants or you're singing or dancing or whatever. You have to know that when you're facing the audience, this is stage right, this is stage left. That's upstage, this is backstage or downstage. Sorry, towards the audience is downstage, towards the back is upstage. They've often called the giraffe the runway model of the animal kingdom. In some of these fashion shows that we did, we had giraffes. We also had the occasional hippo. I don't know where. God bless the people that got the clothes and the models that put them on and then learned to walk at the same time. Some of these people couldn't walk and chew gum. There was one model, and she fell right off the ramp. Remember, we had that ramp extending from the stage and right into the audience? We would do that. We put risers up because we had high risers at one point. And we put 2 lights at the end of the riser facing up so that people would know, oh, I'm coming close to the lights. Maybe I better turn around. And we had at least one model walk right off the end of the riser. I remember that. All these people shall go nameless, but if you saw one of the shows, or if you're involved in the show, you know exactly what I'm talking about. We had a model, and it is a cardinal rule about going on stage. You never chew gum when you're on stage. You just don't. And we had this one model come out, and she's busy chewing gum like this, and so That wasn't, and then they don't listen. They don't listen to people who are directing them. We had stage managers left and right, stage crew people left and right with a clipboard and a pen and a light and saying, "You now go, you come back, stay." And probably one of the most frustrating things to deal with, because once you're picked as a model and you get to wear all these clothes and you get to go on stage, you think you're the next coming of, you know, who knows what, Madonna or something. When in actual fact, you're just you wearing clothes. That's it. You walk up and down, you do a turn, you this, you that, you bow to the audience. You don't. You're not supposed to acknowledge the audience. Theoretically, if you're doing a fashion show, you never acknowledge the audience. If you see professional runway people, the audience doesn't exist. You're there. You're walking as if you're walking down a street with a certain way of walking. If I did that, I'd be in hospital. I don't walk that way. Most people don't walk that way. Well, these people decided that they're going to walk that way. Okay? And then they're wearing high heels or something, and then they haven't walked in high heels since birth, and so they're walking, and sure enough, one girl turns an ankle and falls off the stage, and another one falls into the curtain. There were a couple that looked like they were wearing hockey skates. So yeah, fashion shows are something that they were the role of the devil. I would rather work with actors and actresses and singers and do plays and whatever. When it came to working with models who had no experience being on stage, no experience of how to act in front of an audience, and of course, the student audience. I mean, what did you expect from them? The minute one of those guys makes a mistake up there, students are going to jump all over it like hyenas on a wounded whatever. So, it's like a talent show, except I didn't pick these people, and I didn't dress them, and it was something else. The changing rooms were backstage. My music rooms were usually the changing rooms, and especially for dance recitals, with dance showcases, Miss Daniel and her group of assistants always had a really good handle on who was coming in, who was going, where their clothes were, how much time they had to change, and when it was done, everything was taken out of the room and it was perfect. Um, when there was a fashion show, not too many people. That's the other thing. My bugaboo is people putting on assemblies who have never put on an assembly before in their lives, and they look at the way I do it, and they look at the way Miss Daniel did it, and they look at it's so simple to put together. Okay, we can put this together. I can do that. No, you can't. You haven't. How do you engineer an assembly? How do you do a show? I'll save that for another time because that's a bigger rant. Yeah, so the fashion shows were often funny. And one guy came out and he turned to walk back upstage, and there was a rip up his jacket. I guess he'd reached over to tie his shoe, and the jacket was too tight, and he'd ripped the whole seam out. And so I don't think that's supposed to be on a fashion show. No. The terre du jour. Oh yeah, so we had lots of those. If you have stories about fashion shows gone wrong, let me know. And again, I'll save. I've got so much more material. You have no idea. So look up. There's your homework. Homework is look up Lee Scar episode video number 601. He has a group that he called the immediate family, and these are 4 people that he plays with, that he's been playing with for 50 years. 50, think about that, since 1970. The same drummer, the same guitarist, the same keyboard player. All right? They formed a group. They met about 50 years ago in a recording studio. I think they were doing either Carly Simon or James Taylor or somebody from back then. And they were so good, they get calls to do the next person, the next person, the next person. And we're talking Paul Simon, Art Garfunkel, we're talking Madonna, we're talking TV shows, anything that Mike Post wrote for. That would be, oh God, sitcoms left and right. And the guy, I mean, Lee Sklar has played bass on TV shows, in movies, in on records. He's done almost everything. So at home, and he's the most laid back character. So I kind of patterned this after him, because with him it's like, he's set up a camera in a room with his amp and with his bass, and that's what he does. Um, anyway, so Lee Sklar, and look up the Top Secret Drum Corps. It's worth your 5 minutes that you're going to watch these guys. It's worth it. Um, anyway, we're already up 25 minutes. I'm keeping my eye on the clock here. Again, a happy Father's Day, happy Mother's Day, if we've missed that. Happy Grandparents' Day. Tell your grandparents and your parents happy whatever day, and tell your kids that happy Easter, because I missed that too, and Merry Christmas, missed that too. Um, and tell people to watch these whole videos. Yeah, I know they're 25, 26 minutes long. That's okay. There's lots of stuff in them. I mean, you watch 5 minutes, then you skip and put it away, go to the fridge, come back, watch the next 5 minutes, stop, go to the bathroom, and come back and watch the rest of it. I mean, you might be in it. And you probably will be in the next one. I've got some more material. Anyway, get vaccinated, get your second shot, and that's it. Um, and just don't stand on don't still be under a stage when three Rhine maidens are standing on it. It's a good thing they didn't do Aida. Aida had elephants in it. That's another story. Bye for now.